Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Timey-Wimey Tuesday, my weekly feature about all things Doctor Who. Well, in recent weeks, we wrapped up the Doctor Who DVD disambiguation, taking a look at the entire classic series on DVD. You can check that elsewhere on my channel. Last week, I did a live reaction video all about the first time watching the big epic season finale of Series 9 of the current series, namely the episode entitled Hell Bent, so you can check that out as well. So some of you may be wondering, well, what else are you going to do? I mean, you've done the disambiguation. What more is there? Oh, ye of little faith. This is Doctor Who we're talking about here. This is one of the biggest, longest-running science fiction franchises in history. Trust me, there's plenty more to talk about other than just the DVD disambiguations, alright? I mean, one of the things I'll be doing is individual reviews of every single story and every single DVD release. I mean, that's 3 years worth of content right there. Easily, if I did one a week, that's like 3 years worth of content right there. But that's not all I'm going to be doing. That's still a little ways off because I got to find the time to actually sit down and watch everything. In the meantime, I've been doing sort of overviews of different parts of my collection. In particular, every Friday I do a segment called Fright Night Friday, which is basically about all things horror, because, you know, another huge genre that there's always a lot to talk about. So to kind of kick that off, I've been doing an overview of my horror collection. So I thought over the next few Timey-Wimey Tuesdays, we would take a look at different parts of my Doctor Who collection. Now, as I've always said, as far as the kind of stuff I tend to collect, it's very media-based. I mean, I'm the Multimedia Chronicles guy. I'm all about media. So we're talking things like CDs, records, videos, books, comics, magazines, stuff like that. Like anything that's media-related with the show. And of that, you know, I don't have the most massive collection in the world by far, but I've got some pretty significant, you know, things that are significant to me and my fandom, so I'd like to share them with you. So this time around, to kick things off, I thought we'd go way back to the days before digital audio and check out some of the Doctor Who records I've got. Yes, Doctor Who stuff on vinyl today on Timey-Wimey Tuesday on the Multimedia Chronicles. Materialization for the win. Alright, so to start off with, I guess we'll take a look at the first Doctor Who related thing I ever got on vinyl. We've got Doctor Who sound effects from BBC Records and Tapes. Yeah, here we go. So quite cool. Now, having grown up with the Tom Baker era, I certainly love this cover. It has always been very, very special to me. If we slide this out here, you can take a look. Look at that. All old and yellow. Just take a look. And, I mean, as you can see, I take pretty good care of my records. And needless to say, this has been very, very well played over the years. And it's funny, so much so that whenever I hear one of the sound effects on it in the show, I immediately recognize it from my record. I became very intimately familiar with the sound effects of the first, you know, few decades of Doctor Who. So let's see what we've got here. So side one, we have the Central Control Room in Exelon City from Doctor Who and the Exelons. Now, Doctor Who fans will know that that's actually from Death to the Daleks. I think the book may have been called Doctor Who and the Exelons, or actually, I don't think the book was called that either. I don't know. Maybe that was like a working title. Who knows? The Dalek Control Room from Death to the Daleks. See, there they have the correct title. Why didn't they say that? And actually, interestingly enough, that particular Dalek control room sound has been used since the very first Dalek story, so it goes right back to the beginning. In fact, they still use that sound today. Whenever the Daleks show up, you can almost always hear it in the background in their control room. Metabolus 3 atmosphere from Planet of the Spiders. Yes. Basically, atmospheric sounds from Metabolus 3, a planet which we've heard mentioned of many times before. The third Doctor went there twice. Once in the Green Death to get the green or the blue crystal, and then again in Planet of the Spiders when it was discovered that the blue crystal held, was a little more important than they realized. Steyer's scouting machine. Approach, stop, search, and depart. From the Destructors. What is with these horribly wrong episode titles? There's no episode in the entire history of the series called The Destructors. That particular sound effect is from one called The Sontaran Experiment, the only two-parter in the entire run of Tom Baker's Doctor. Dalek hatching tanks on Skaros. Skaros? Really? Who wrote this? Like an intern who had never watched an episode of Doctor Who? I did not expect this to be a rant. I thought this would be a nice little nostalgic reminiscence, but I can't believe how many mistakes are here, and we're only halfway through side 1. So Dalek hatching tanks on Skaros, which of course should be Skaro, from Genesis of the Daleks. Very good. Zygons Spaceship Control Center, which is a really cool atmospheric sound effect, actually, which I don't think they've... Actually, did they reuse it? They may have used bits of it in the recent 2-part Zygon story. I don't recall. Apparently from Doctor Who and the Zygons. Okay, the episode was Terror of the Zygons. The novel was Doctor Who and the Loch Ness Monster. There was never a story called Doctor Who and the Zygons. Okay. Sutek Time Tunnel from Pyramid of Mars. Okay, it's actually Pyramids of Mars, but we can let that one go. That's a really cool sound effect, by the way, also. The interior of Zoanon from Face of Evil. It's actually The Face of Evil, but that's fine. Whatever, we can let that one go, too. Yeah, very, very cool. Very cool indeed. And it's interesting that they say, as these sound effects are specially made for television use, they are in mono. Boy, that really takes us back, doesn't it? The days before stereo television. When was this actually released? Does it actually say? 1978. That's when this record came out. 1978. So carrying on, side 2, we have The Shrine of the Sisterhood of Karn from Doctor Who and the Brain of Morbius. Okay, that's what the book was called. The actual episode was just called The Brain of Morbius. Crawl Disorientation Chamber from Android Invasion. Actually, the Android Invasion. Oh my god, really? More? The Mandragora Helix from The Curse of Mandragora. Was The Mask of Mandragora. Atomic Reactor Runs Wild from The Hand of Death. Wind Mine Machine from Robots of Death. Wind Mine. I don't think it was called a Wind Mine Machine. I forget what exactly. I just watched that episode again recently, too. The Robots of Death. One of my all-time favorites, by the way. I love that one so much. I thought it was just called a Spice Miner or something. I can't remember. Anyway, Distillation Chamber from The Talons of Wang Chiang. Oh, sure, they get The Talons of Wang Chiang right. Like, one of the more complicated to spell titles. They even got the apostrophe right between Chi and Ang. In track 7, Cloning and Miniaturization Process from The Enemy Within. Inside Doctor Who's Mind from The Enemy Within. TARDIS Interior in Flight. And TARDIS Interior Stationary. Those are sound effects that we still hear from time to time. Not as much with the newer console rooms, but they still show up sometimes. I think actually when we heard the original, saw the original console room make an appearance in the season finale, we may have heard some of those sounds again. TARDIS observation screen operates. TARDIS door opens. Sonic screwdriver. Now that's the old school sonic screwdriver. The newer ones have a slightly different sound. Fission gun. 2 blasts from the Ark in Space. Tesh gun from The Face of Evil. Gallifreyan Staser Gun, 3 blasts from The Deadly Assassin, another one of my favorite stories. Varden Gun from The Invasion of Time. Santaran Gun, 3 blasts from The Invasion of Time. Gallifreyan Staser, 3 blasts from The Invasion of Time. Dematerializer Gun, switch on and fire from The Invasion of Time. I really love The Invasion of Time on this one. Dalek Gun, 3 blasts from Genesis of the Daleks. And finally, the Dragon Ray Gun from The Talons of Wang Chiang. Whew, that is quite a track list. There's a lot of cool sound effects on there, all from the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, of course. By the way, the album, I should mention, was produced by Dick Mills and Brian Hodgson of the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. And this is the first time I heard of Earth referred to as Sol 3 in the Mutter's Spiral. I'll just quickly read the description on the back. It says, everyone knows that Doctor Who's TARDIS is bigger on the inside than outside, and the selection of aural locations from the Doctor's travels will equally broaden your horizons. No less than 7 alien worlds are visited, together with some extraordinary extra-dimensional occurrences encountered on Earth, Sol 3 in the Mutter's Spiral. Add to these an audiogram of the Doctor's own mind processes, TARDIS operations, some weapons for self-defense, and your galactic safety is ensured. Time Lord note, a source of jelly babies is recommended to complete the illusion of time travel. Time travel, yes. So there you go. Doctor Who sound effects. Gotta love it, despite all of the errors. You know, just in case you don't believe me, let me show you. Let me show you. I'm going to zoom in here, and you freeze frame on it, and see for yourself. Here, hold on. There you go. See for yourself. Warts and all, there's the track list for Doctor Who sound effects. You know, it kind of reminds me of the Doctor Who VHS releases in the 80s, where some of the descriptions on the back really left a lot of fans scratching their heads, wondering whoever wrote the copy for those cases had ever even seen the show, or just read a couple of descriptions somewhere and inferred a bunch of information from that. I don't know, man. I don't know. So the next one I got, not strictly Doctor Who, but there is some familiar sounds on this one. We have Out of This World. Yes, a collection of atmospheric sounds and effects from the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. This is a wonderful companion to this. Fantastic stuff. Now, I'm pretty sure these have been released on CD in the interim. You can probably still find them out in the wild somewhere if you're really, really lucky. But this is really cool. There are so many sound effects on here. I'm just going to blow through them really, really quick. Yeah, so side 1, we have 2 sections, Outer Space and Magic and Fantasy. So Outer Space, we have Sea of Mercury, Galactic Travel, TARDIS Takeoff, TARDIS Land, Space Rocket Takeoff and Land, Flying Saucer Land Takeoff, and Flying Saucer Interior Constant Run. Spaceship Control Room Atmosphere, Spaceship Interior Atmosphere, Electric Door Open, Electric Door Shut, Laser Gun, 5 bursts, Computer, Gravity Generator, Time Warp, Starts, Run, and Stop, Venusian Space Lab, Andromedan War Machine, and Space Battle. Now, a lot of these tracks are only like 10 or 15 seconds long. Some of them are a minute, but generally quite short. Because many of these would have been done for television productions and such, where they only needed sort of a short bit to, for something in the show. Next we have Magic and Fantasy. So we got Dance of Fireflies, Dreaming, Crystal City, Enchanted Forest, Goblin's Lair, Magic Carpet, Takeoff, Flight, and Landing. Magic Flower Grows and Buds, Magic Beanstalk Grows, Star Fairies, Midsummer Elves, Fairy Appears, Fairy Disappears, Wizard Flies Off, Casting a Spell, Magic Mushroom, Magic Bird Song, and then that takes us to side 2. So side 2, we have Suspense and the Supernatural. We've got Phantoms of Darkness, Uncanny Expectation, Spectres in the Wind, Evil Rises Up, Threatening Shadow, Moments of Terror, Passing Shade, Psychic Fears, 2 Terror Twangs, followed by 3 Terror Bangs, a Terror Zing, a Terror Glissando, Thing Approaches, not The Thing and not Thing from the Addams Family, just some thing, Roaring Monster, Fire-Spitting Monster, Nightmare Forest, and Fiendish Streaks. Finally, we have the elements. We've got heat haze, desert sands, frozen waste, icy peak, snow swirls, passing clouds, starry skies, electric storm, watery depths, rising bubbles, and spring tide. Now, it's interesting. It says here the recordings on this disc have been converted to simulated stereo. I think some of them may have actually been recorded in stereo originally. But here's an interesting thing. Anybody familiar with the BBC Radiophonic Workshop and its various just staggeringly creative staff over the years, it actually tells you who composed each one. It has a letter to that refers to a footnote, like A, B, C, D, or whatever. So A is composed by this person, B is composed by this person, etc. So here's the people on here who composed all of these sound effects. See if you recognize some names, my fellow Whovians. Got John Baker, David Kane, Malcolm Clark, Delia Derbyshire. Yeah, you should know her. Brian Hodgson, Peter Howell, Glynis Jones, Paddy Kingsland, Roger Lim, Dick Mills, and Richard Yeoman Clark. Pretty much a pantheon of classic Who composers and sound effects people right there, folks. So, yeah, definitely a lot of stuff to be enjoyed here for the classic Who fan. If we take a look on the back, oh, well, if you look closely, you might be able to read it. Do you want me to zoom in on that too? Okay, hold on. I'll zoom in on that too, and you can get a closer look. Hang on. Okay, there you go. So if you're watching this in high def, just pause, and you should be able to read it. And I'll give you a closer look at the front there too, to so you can see the cool artwork. Very nice. Love that. Love that old school sci-fi look. I mean, it looks just like one of those cheesy pulp sci-fi novels you might have found on the shelf in the 50s or 60s. All right. Well, just looking at how long we've been going here, I think we're going to call this part 1. Yes, this is the end of part 1. I actually have 2 more records that we'll take a look at next time. And funny enough, I didn't even plan it this way, but it'll end up being a very Doctor Who related one and a somewhat Doctor Who related one. Yeah, so we'll check those out next time, next Tuesday. Alrighty, well, hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the world of Doctor Who on vinyl. There was quite a lot released over the years. I mean, as far back as the 60s. I mean, back in the 60s, there was one, I have a picture of it actually. It was this one here. Was basically a Dalek adventure. So it was just some random Dalek story. I don't think it even has any of the Doctor Who characters in it. It's just strictly a Dalek story. Mind you, at the time, they actually had a Dalek comic strip that was all about the adventures of the Daleks and such, that was running in one of the kids' magazines. Yeah, so I think this actually ties more in with that. But this is, as far as I know, the earliest example of a Doctor Who record. It's from 1965, and then since then there's been lots over the years, especially during the 70s when the series was really at its peak in the classic era. There was quite a lot of Doctor Who stuff out there: toys, books, records, comics, everything. There was just that's really when it started to explode. It was definitely popular during the 60s, but the 70s is really when it hit its peak and was a bona fide phenomenon. Pretty cool stuff, and there's quite a lot of merchandise that came out of that era, some of which I have, most of which I don't. Yes, there's just way too much. But records, love me some records. I got to get a record player again so I can actually start listening to some of these again, or maybe track down the CD versions. I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling now. So we'll see you next Tuesday for a look at the rest of my record collection, all 2 of the remaining ones. And and then on to something else the week after that. Alrighty, just a quick thank you to my Patreon sponsors. Thank you, Patreon sponsors. A special big thanks to Kyle Pellegrini, my current highest level sponsor. Really appreciate the support. And please do consider becoming a sponsor on Patreon, as it just helps me to do more and more of this stuff for you, and more fun for all. Fun will be had by all. Alrighty, that is it for this week. We'll see you next week. Until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara.